What's your gospel gonna be? Living in bondage or free? What's your gospel gonna be? You gotta write a new one for me. Blaming those who knocked me down, or give them thanks for being around. Stuck in stories I have told, I'm letting go of the old. Oh, what's your gospel gonna be? Living in bondage or free? What's your gospel gonna be? You gotta write a new one for me. Blessing moments of my shame, making dust out of my pain. Calming waters I have stormed, walk where love has been born. Yeah. What's your gospel gonna be? Living in bondage or free? What's your gospel gonna be? Gotta write a new one for me. Love my neighbor as myself. Rush right in when you cry for help. Give my gifts and share my wealth. Am I willing to forgive myself? Come on, y'all. What's your gospel gonna be? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Living in bondage or free? Oh, living in bondage or free? What's your gospel gonna be? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You gotta write a new one for me. Oh, yeah, yeah. What's your gospel gonna be? Living in bondage or free? What's your gospel gonna be? I gotta write a new one for me. What's your gospel gonna be? What's your gospel gonna be? Living in bondage or free? What's your gospel gonna be? I gotta write a new one for me. Gotta write a new one, gotta write a new one, gotta write a new one for me. Gotta write a new one for me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Gotta write a new one for me. Oh, yeah, yeah. Gotta write a new one for me. Gotta write a new one for yourself now. Gotta write a new one for me. Oh, yeah. Gotta write a new one for me. Here we go, gotta na. What's your gospel gonna be? Thank you all so much.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, that's an amen right there. I say thank you to Gary Lynn Floyd and to Jamie Lula for that beautiful song, What's Your Gospel Gonna Be? I'm the Reverend Deborah Johnson, and welcome to Inner Light Ministries for this very holy, special time. Today is Good Friday, and this is our Good Friday service to just stop, breathe for a moment, remember some things that will help us on our journey of this thing called life to go even deeper, to go even higher in the recognition of ourselves as sons and daughters of the Most High. This is also the start of Passover. So, for those of you who, depending on what time zone that you're in, you might already be engaged in Passover activities. It's not quite sunset yet here on the West Coast. But, you know, what we call the Last Supper, which was the event that was starting the whole Good Friday um, historical events, was actually a Jewish Seder. That was the Passover. Jesus and his disciples had come into Jerusalem for the high holy days, and it was a Seder. And I actually love it when Passover and Good Friday fall on the same day, because I feel like it's a little bit more historically correct. So in this brief time, I'd like to just share a few reflections about this one whose name actually was Yeshua. Yeshua. That sound Jesus, that actually is not in Hebrew. That sound actually doesn't exist there. His real name was Yeshua, and his prophetic name was Emmanuel. Yeshua means the living one saves, and Emmanuel means that God is with us. So this Jesus, this Yeshua, taught in many different ways. He taught in parables. He taught in precepts, in teachings. He taught by way of his own life, and he taught by miracles. I'd like to spend a few moments with you now talking about how he lived his life, particularly that last day of his life that was celebrated as what we know of as Good Friday. So, contrary to popular belief, the Jews did not kill Jesus. Jesus was tried in a Roman court. Yes, the Jews of the day had something to do with it, but the area was under Roman occupation. And it was actually Pontius Pilate, who was the governor of the area, who oversaw the trial and the execution. So Jesus's execution is on a cross, on Calvary. There are these phrases that are attributed to him while he's hanging on the cross. They're sometimes referred to as the last words of Jesus. It might be more accurate to say that they were some of the last phrases of Jesus. The one that I would like to address the most tonight is, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. I believe that forgiveness is something that we really need to not only understand, but really need to up our practice of right now. We find there's so much divisiveness, there's so much contentiousness. War is going on, just a lot, a lot of energy. And the weight of it, the judgment of it, the frustration, the anxieties around it can spiritually dummy us down. our energetic frequencies can go down when we start resonating and vibrating with the outer stuff and the chaos of the world. I get these downloads, these spiritual messages, and some of them are in a series called Letters from the Infinite. In the first volume, called The Sacred Yes, there's a letter in there that is entitled Being a Christ. I'm particularly fond of this one sentence in that letter. It says, being a Christ is knowing that you can't be killed and forgiving them for trying to anyway. Being a Christ is knowing that you can't be killed and forgiving them for trying to anyway. Everything that Jesus was doing was not to set himself up as an exception. Everything that Jesus was doing was setting himself up as a divine example to say that everything that I'm doing, you can do. Not only can you do it, but even greater works will you do. He was trying to get people to see themselves through a new lens, to create a new identity. When he's questioned about, well, what were the greatest commandments? He didn't talk about rituals. He didn't talk about practices or protocols. He went straight to identity. He didn't talk about behavior. He talked about consciousness. He said the greatest commandment was to love your Lord, your God, with all of your heart, with all of your strength, and with all of your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Not the golden rule to do unto other people as you would have them do unto you, but to love your neighbor as yourself. This love is the agapeo love. It's the choice love. It's the oneness love. So can you imagine what a world we would have if with everything that we had, we felt connected to God, and with everything that we had, shared that sense of connection that we had with God with everybody else. Understanding that there's just only one of us here. I'm one with God and everybody's one with me. Just breathe that in for a moment. Forgiveness is not for the purpose of pretending like something doesn't exist. That's not what the forgiveness is about. Forgiveness is relationship. Forgiveness is shifting your relationship to what has happened so that you don't do what I just mentioned, so that you don't find yourself vibrating at the frequency and the energy of the activities and the events that are going on in the outer world. That quite the contrary, when you practice this thing called forgiveness, you're able to stay on a higher frequency. You're able to stay on a higher vibration because where you dwell is transcendent of the things that are going on in the world. Forgiveness is a choice. It is the flip side of unconditional loving. Unconditional loving is being in a state of perpetual forgiveness, a state of forever letting it go. That's why God is love, because God's not holding on to anything. God is forever letting things go, making the light to shine on the just and the unjust. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Now, there's a section in scripture that we know of as the Sermon on the Mount. It shows up in the book of Matthew, chapters 5, 6, and 7. The basic precepts of what we would call the Christian religion are in that particular section. In chapter 6, there's a few passages there that we have come to refer to quite often as the Lord's Prayer. In the Lord's Prayer, and the Lord's Prayer, mind you, is an our prayer. It's a collective prayer. It's not an individual prayer. Let that sink in for a moment. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. So notice in that, who forgives what? Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. This word debt, linguistically speaking, that's being used in scripture is a trespass. It's a trespass for which reparation is obligatory. An encroachment of some kind. It's not just a fiscal or like a financial debt, which of course would be something where paying back would be obligatory if it's a financial debt, but it's a trespass. A trespass is when you encroach on some territory that you had no business being in. That requires that you make some kind of amends. We cannot forgive each other's debts. We cannot forgive each other's trespasses. There's a consequence of every action. Con with sequence. There's a consequence. You can't control that. There's a rippling effect that always goes on. Sometimes we refer to this as karma, a karmic effect. Every tradition understands this. You reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. Karmic, that there's some kind of way where what you put out comes back, for better or for worse. Okay. You can't stop that. The only thing that we can do is forgive each other for the trespass, not wipe it clean. And the forgiving each other isn't really so much about the other person as it is shifting your relationship to it so that you are no longer held under its karmic effects. In Greek, they have different tenses than what we have in English. The New Testament was first written in Greek. There's a tense called the middle voice, which means that the action that's taking place is impacting the actor, the one who's doing it. Okay. When we say the word forgive, we think it's doing something for somebody else. No, you're the one that gets impacted. The first person that gets freed from the forgiveness is you. Some of the people that you need to forgive, they could be dead and gone. Long time ago. Okay. Your anger, your frustration, your resentment, it's not impacting them where they are. It's you. It's impacting you. I contend that if Jesus had not practiced forgiveness on the cross, he'd have just died a martyr. He'd have just died an angry, bitter, resentful, whatever, martyr. Forgiveness gets you off the cross. Forgiveness gets you off your cross. It doesn't matter how you got up there or who put you up there or for what reason. Forgiveness gets you off the cross and on to being the Christ that you are called to be, to your own resurrection. What do you want? Do you want vengeance? Do you want retribution? Do you want revenge? What do you want? Or do you want renewal, restoration, resurrection? See, that's an ongoing process that you get to determine whether or not you allow yourself to experience it. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. So in Greek, they make a distinction between the noun and the verb. In the English language, we oftentimes use the same for both. For example, we have a building, but we have a building because there was a process of building. Okay? You have a painting, but you have a painting because there was a process of painting. You have love as a noun because there was the process of love taking place. So we don't quite know which is which. But even in the English language, what we understand has the lasting legacy is the noun, is what gets created. So I'm in a building, and few of us even consider about the process that it took, the building, the verb building, to make this noun building, because the noun lasts longer. It's whatever that is that has been created out of it goes on separate and beyond the activity of its creation. That's what Jesus was speaking of there. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. This wasn't about the making part. He knew they knew that they were crucifying him. He wasn't saying that they were stupid. What he was saying is that they were setting something into motion, and they had no idea of what it was that they were setting into motion. They had no idea of what they were setting into motion. Take a breath. This is how it is for all of us. We have no idea what we're setting into motion. We don't. For better or for worse. We're blessing people in ways that we don't even realize that we're blessing them. And we're also hurting each other in ways that we don't even know, that we don't even recognize. But they're rippling effects that are going on and on and on. Unintentional impacts, but impacts nonetheless. So if we stay stuck in the they hurt me and they did this to me and that to me or whatever, we stay in that energy. We stay on that cross. But the moment that there's something within you that says, you know what? I don't need to be on this cross. I'm going to take the sticky stuff off of me. I'm going to take the Velcro off of me. I am not going to keep dwelling on this. I am not going to keep repeating this in my mind. because I am more than this. I am more than this. I'm not suggesting that you put your head in the sand or that you act like this thing didn't happen or that thing didn't happen. I love this message that my spirit voice gave to me one day a couple of years ago. And it said, turn your wounds into scars. Scars don't hurt anymore. Turn your wound into scars. Scars don't hurt anymore. It went on to say, you can wear your scar as a merit badge if you want to. I'm not asking you to hide anything. Just stop hurting. Just stop hurting. Because when you keep hurting, you can't be the Christ that you're called to be. When you keep hurting, you're in a lot of judgment and you're in a lot of blame. Your energy goes down, your chi, spiritual chi vibration goes down. Have freedom. I remember a conversation that I had a few years back when Dylan Roof went into the church and shot up 9 people. It's just hard to believe that he could sit there and pray with people and then just shoot them. And it showed the parishioners, it showed the congregants going to the jail there and telling him that they forgave him. And a lot of my people were asking me, like, how could they do that? And I asked them, I said, when you were a kid, did you ever play this game on the playground called the cooties? So the cooties was this thing where it's like somebody had some kind of imaginary disease or something like that. And it was communicable and you passed it off onto one another through touching. Okay. So if somebody touched you with the cooties, you had the cooties, and then you wanted to get rid of the cooties. So you ran around and found somebody else and you touched them and that got it off of you and put it on them. And you just, this game, everybody's just running around. So I said, Dylan Roof had the cooties. He had the cooties. Said he'd already shot up and killed their relatives and their friends. They weren't going to walk around with the burden of his karma. They weren't going to walk around with the burden of what he set into motion. He got to deal with that with his maker. But they wanted to be free. There's been a lot of talk about what happened at the Oscars and Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. There's been conversation ad nauseum, and I'm not even like trying to weigh in on an opinion on that. But I want to weave it to this of what we're talking about right now. Maybe 2 weeks before the Oscars, I happened to catch a show on Apple TV. I think it's called Oprah's Conversations. It was an interview that she had done with Will Smith last December, just a few months before the Oscars. He was starting his book tour on his memoir, a book called Will. And the movie that he won the Oscar for, King Richard, playing the life of Richard Williams, the father of Venus and Serena Williams, the tennis stars, had really made it to the top of the charts. Oprah was telling Will that she thought that his memoir was the best memoir she had ever read. Wow. And she said that she thought that the movie King Richard was the best movie that she had ever seen of an African American family. That's quite a compliment coming from Oprah. So she's going through the book and she reads some of the and I think it might even have been the opening sentence. And it is the recollection of his life of an incident that happened when he was a child. I want to say around 9 years old or something like that. And it was something that he had never discussed with anybody, even the parties involved, until he just wrote this book. So they showed some B-roll footage of him sitting down, taking a couple of weeks and actually reading the whole book to his family so they could see the things that he had said about them. This opening was a story of an incident of domestic violence when his father had hit his mother so hard that she was bleeding. And he said he felt like a coward, that he couldn't save and protect his mother. He said that had been plaguing him his whole life, this feeling about being a coward. That the movies like Men in Black and all of that was an overcompensation for this deep feeling that he'd had and how much it had messed up his relationships with women in the past, feeling like he couldn't protect them or didn't know how to protect them. When I watched the footage of him going up on stage and slapping Chris, seeing this wounded look in his wife's eye, I immediately thought of that interview. It was like, oh my God, here it is. Here it is. And that spirit voice said to me as I was watching it, you become what you don't forgive. You become what you don't forgive. That's how we get into the cycles of abuse. You show me a child molester, and I will show you a molested child that's now an adult. If we want to break the dramas and the traumas that are not only happening in our individual lives, but I mean at the large scale, like wars too, we're going to have to learn how to shift our relationship to one another through this thing called forgiveness. Knowing that it's for you. Don't die a martyr on your cross. Resurrect. The forgiveness is the key, When you look out at all that they're doing and know they don't even understand what they're doing. They think they're doing this, that, to protect themselves or to hurt me or whatnot. But like whatever that is, God, you got that. You got that. I got to go on with being whom I'm called to be. I got places to go. I got things to do. I got to go on and be a Christ. There's a journey that I'm on. Ain't nobody got time for this. Just breathe that in for a moment. You say, well, I'm not there. I can't do that. Okay. Are you willing to try to get there? Are you willing to forgive? I don't know. Are you willing to be willing to forgive? I don't know. Are you willing to be willing to forgive? Go back as far as you have to go and start there. But I'm telling you, the art of forgiveness, it's the flip side of unconditional love. You can't really love, you can't really experience the goodness of life if you're unwilling to do the forgiveness. And you know, the people who are the most unforgiving, they're just angry. You don't even want to be around in their presence. Be the light that you are. Just breathe that in. Think on these things. Think on these things. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season here. For those of you who are in the Santa Cruz area, we're actually going to be having our service in person as well as virtually at 10:30 Eastern, April the 17th, 2022, at the 418 Project, which is downtown Santa Cruz. You can check our calendar for all of our events and things that are going on. And to say thank you again to those of you who send donations and those of you who send contributions. There are a number of ways that you are, in fact, able to do that. You can do it online. You go to our website. You can also do Cash App. You can text to give. All that information is on our website, and we so appreciate your support. So breathe this in. Being a Christ is knowing you can't be killed, knowing you're gonna resurrect, knowing that, knowing you can't be killed, and forgiving them for trying to anyway. As we like to say, take this consciousness and multiply it. Peace and blessings to you.